Hi, this is Ike from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got a record to play for you. Today record is Sinbad the Sailor from 1963. So let's get started.
Oh, this bundle. Heaviest bundle I think I've ever carried. Oh, can't go much further. Must rest. Ah. Oh, Allah. That's better. Never in my years of carrying bundles in the markets have I carried one so heavy. Oh, Allah, Allah, why is my life so hard? How hard I must work for just a scrap of food and just a handful of straw on which to sleep. Trudging all day through the markets of Baghdad, each bundle heavier than the last. Oh, but Allah, forgive me. Hear me, I don't wish to complain. Oh, no, Allah, you are good to me. I am alive, and you have given me good health. I thank you, Allah, that you have given me as much as you do. Look, to earn your forgiveness, I shall walk twice as fast now with this bundle.
Sinbad was a poor man. He made his living by carrying big bundles and heavy packages of goods from one market to another.
Wait, you porter, you carrier of bundles, wait! My master asks that you enter his palace and speak with him.
Sinbad was frightened. What could the master of such a great palace wish to say to an humble porter like himself? But Sinbad was afraid also not to obey. He followed the servant through the gate. Inside the gate, there was a lovely garden filled with fragrant flowers and shady trees and sparkling fountains. And there, under the trees, stretched a long table at which were seated many men who were eating food more delicious than any that the nose of Sinbad had ever smelled. Over to one side, on a platform that was raised high, like the throne of a king, there sat a gentle-looking man with sparkling, friendly eyes and a long white beard, which could not hide a warm smile. The old man on the platform motioned to Sinbad to come nearer.
Come to me, porter. Do not be afraid. While I was walking in my garden just now near the gate, I heard your prayer to Allah. Though your life is hard, you did not complain. Your humble thanks to Allah for life itself deserves reward. Come, take a seat at my table. Eat and drink all you wish, and then we will talk together of other things.
First, servants washed and dried the hands and face of Sinbad. They seated him at a place of honor at the table, and then they placed before him food like none his lips had ever tasted. While Sinbad ate, musicians played beautiful melodies and lovely dark-eyed girls danced for the pleasure of the company. Sinbad thought he must be in heaven, or at least in the home of a prince. When Sinbad had eaten his fill, the old man asked everyone else to leave the garden, motioned Sinbad to a stool at his feet, and said,
Your humble virtue deserves reward. Few people realize what a precious thing life alone can be. It does not matter if a man is poor or if a man is rich. All that matters is that he live as good a life as he can and be happy with his lot. Tell me, what is your name?
My name is Sinbad. And as you saw, I'm a porter who carries bundles for the merchants.
Allah be praised. Do you know the strange accident which has occurred? My name, too, is Sinbad. You are Sinbad the porter. I am Sinbad the sailor. We are, like all men, brothers, but more since you are Sinbad and I am also Sinbad. We two are almost like brothers born to each other. Perhaps Allah has sent you to be my special friend. You are young enough that you could be my son or my grandson. In any case, Sinbad the porter, carry your bundle now to where it must go, but tomorrow at noon, come back to my palace. Eat again at my table. I wish to tell you the strange tale of my life.
Next day at noon, Sinbad the porter returned to the palace of Sinbad the sailor. Once more the servants washed his hands and feet. Once more musicians played and dancing girls danced. And once more, when Sinbad the porter had eaten his fill of delicious foods, Sinbad the sailor asked his other guests to leave. When they were alone, the two Sinbads, Sinbad the sailor smiled warmly and said,
You do not know, Sinbad the porter, what pleasure our meeting has given to me. I have no son, and perhaps you can make me feel each day for a while that you are that son who could give pleasure to the last years of my old life.
You honor me, noble Sinbad the sailor. I can only say that I shall try to do my best. I thank you for the privilege. My father died when I was but a baby, and I never knew a father's love. I thank Allah, too, that he has let us meet.
Well spoken, Sinbad the porter, and humbly spoken, too. But now, let me begin to tell you the story of my life. I think you will find that I, too, have had cause to thank Allah for the very gift of life in the midst of hardship and misery. Listen well, Sinbad the porter, to the tale of Sinbad the sailor. My father was a merchant, a rich man who lived in a palace almost as great as this. As a youth, I was pampered with all that I wished. Perhaps I was pampered too much. My life was easy. I did not have to work for my daily bread. When my father died, I was 21, young and inexperienced and loving idle pleasures. I began to live more lavishly than ever before. I drank, I gambled, I wore rich robes and gave great parties. I wasted my inheritance away.
Oh, Lord Sinbad the sailor, not you. You are so wise.
Wise now, Sinbad the porter. But then, I was a stupid youth. I had to learn with experience, and I thank Allah that I did. Perhaps 2 years after my father's death, my wasteful ways had almost bankrupted me. I had spent all the money which was mine. I had sold all the jewels my father had left. I had let his business waste away, I possessed only our home, the palace where I lived. But, praise be to Allah, I caught myself in time.
Praise be to Allah indeed, O Sinbad. What happened then?
I sold the palace. It brought me a good sum of money. In fact, enough money that I was still rich. But I had now to make that money earn more money. I stopped my wasteful ways. My father had been a merchant of the land, leading caravans across the desert. But I thought to myself, there are other merchants who earn even more wealth.
Which merchants?
Why, sailors themselves, my boy. Not just the sailor sort who sails a ship, but the merchant sailor who buys goods, sails to a strange land, trades the goods for others, then returns home to sell his wares from afar.
Your wisdom staggers the senses of a humble man.
Ah, Porter, you will learn from my tale that the life of the merchant sailor is not easy. It is filled with danger. But let me tell you of my first voyage. With the money paid me for the palace, I bought all sorts of beautiful things, as only the craftsmen of Baghdad can make. Bronze lamps and rich silk stuffs, jeweled necklaces, and swords of the finest steel. With my wares, I crossed the desert to the port city of Basra. There, I found a ship bound to take merchant sailors like me to far lands to barter and trade. We sailed for several days from island to island, stopping at each to sell, to buy, to trade. Then, one day, we stopped at a small island merely so that we might rest and cook a meal on dry land. While the crew of the ship and our servants lit the fires to prepare our food, we merchants strolled the island. It was small, but pretty as a tiny garden of Eden, with young trees and lovely flowers. I decided I would take a nap, and, excusing myself from my companions, I lay down beneath a shady bush to doze. I had barely fallen asleep when the earth began to tremble and twitch beneath me. From the deck of the ship anchored off the island, the captain shouted,
Save yourselves! Save yourselves! Leap into the sea! Oh, this is no island. Look at the great fish. It is a whale so large that it has slept for years. And earth has gathered on its back, and trees have grown up. Save yourselves! The fires you have lit are rousing the whale from its sleep.
Oh, Sinbad the sailor, how did you save yourself? How?
I began running, but the ship was far from where I had slept. Already the captain was raising anchor to sail away swiftly and save those who were aboard. The whale, enraged by the heat of the fires, began to pitch like an earthquake that breaks mountains. As it flipped, I was thrown into the air, landing 100 feet out in the sea. The waters boiled as the whale thrashed. I was sucked deep into the sea, but then I was thrown to the surface again. I prayed somehow that I might at least see paradise. Then, the miracle occurred. A wave dashed me against a huge wooden tub. We had used it in the ship to wash our clothes. I clung to the tub for my very life. The whale pitched for many minutes, and then swam quickly toward deeper water. Thus, the water soon calmed, and I climbed into the tub, which now became a little rowboat for me.
Where did the boat take you?
Ah, my son, I paddled the waters with my hands as if they were oars. Praise be Allah, it was but a day until I reached the shore. Exhausted and frightened, I flung myself to the beach and slept. I might have been in an unfriendly land, perhaps a land of savages and cannibals. But the voice which woke me several hours later was that of a friendly, civilized man. He shook me and spoke.
Awake, pitiful man. Who are you? What misfortune has fallen in your way?
My name, sir, is Sinbad, and I am a sailor merchant, I answered, and then told him my fantastic tale.
Sinbad the sailor, I am a man of the king of this island. I capture young horses for him, horses that run wild in these parts. Today, my band of men and I return to the capital of the king, bringing him a new herd. I know the king will wonder at your story, and he will help you.
And so, I joined the band on their journey to their king, riding a fine horse they loaned me and helping them with their wild herd. They were magnificent horsemen, but I noticed they did not use saddles. I learned that I was in India, but though the king did not worship our God, I found him kind. As his servant had predicted, he marveled at my story and offered me his hospitality. Ships from my own country seldom reached his shores, he told me, but until one came, I was his guest. I wondered in my heart and thanked Allah for his blessing.
But how long, O Lord Sinbad, were you there?
Ah, my son, many, many months. But I was treated well, and believe it or not, I made a large fortune. To repay the king for his kindness, I decided to make him a saddle. When it was finished, he marveled at it, as though it were as much a miracle as the story of my shipwreck. Once the king, astride a beautiful horse, rode through his city to show off my saddle. Everyone in the city wanted a saddle too. So I set up a shop with dozens of workmen, and I made hundreds of saddles and sold hundreds of saddles, and quickly became wealthy. My son, I was wealthy, but I longed for my own land, my own people. And then Allah blessed me again. How, Lord? One day, news arrived at my shop that a ship from my land had appeared in the harbor, filled with merchants set to trade. When I reached the docks, behold, I saw bundles of my own merchandise, the goods that had been upon the ship on which I had traveled. And there stood the captain of the ship, selling them. When I greeted him and told him my tale, he wondered almost as much as had the king. Then he said,
Oh, lucky Sinbad. I was not selling your goods for personal profit. Instead, I was holding the money for your heirs back in our homeland. There is little left of your goods, and when you see what the rest has earned, you'll see that you are rich.
And so I asked the king permission to join the ship and return home. He was saddened to see me go, but he was gracious. And thus I left India with not one, but two fortunes, that from the saddles and that from the goods in the ship. Allah be praised. From your lips to the ears of Allah, my son.
Oh, my Lord Sinbad. Did you ever voyage forth again on a treacherous sea?
Many times, my son. But, well, those are tales for other days. I am weary now. Go to your home. Here is a bag of money. Return tomorrow and eat with me again. I shall tell you more then. Meanwhile, buy yourself some good clothes, that the sight of my new friend might please my eyes.
On the next day, at noon, Sinbad the porter arrived at the palace of Sinbad the sailor. He was dressed in fine silk, and around his head was bound a turban of fine white gauze. Sinbad the sailor looked at his young friend and was pleased. The youth was strong and handsome, a likely friend, a likely son. Again they ate, and again they sat alone for the old man to continue his tale.
After I returned from India, I built a beautiful palace and led a life of leisure and pleasure. But as the months and even years went by, I longed to return to the sea and to trading. Slowly I made short trips, but soon the itch was in me to sail on a long voyage. And this was one of the greatest of my adventures, and one of the most dangerous. I gathered a wealth of goods at Basra and embarked once more in a sturdy ship. We visited strange lands, and I traded much and made much money. Oh, the wonders that my eyes have seen. Exotic cities, savage beasts of frightening shape, people almost as savage. About 6 months after leaving Basra, our ship anchored off a deserted but pleasing island. Once again, as on my first voyage, I wandered off alone to take a nap. When I awoke, I found the ship had left the shore without me.
Your words chill me to the bone, Father.
Ah, wait, Sinbad, my son. More frightening is to come. When I knew I was abandoned by the ship, I climbed a high tree, and far off in the distance, I saw a gleaming white dome. The men here must be civilized to build so perfect a dome, I thought. Slowly, I picked my way toward that oval dome through thick jungle. But when I arrived, I found it was a solid mass with no windows and no doors. As I searched more at the secret of this dome, the sky grew black. I looked to see what storm clouds could have darkened the sky so suddenly. Beneath my lips, it was that huge bird they call the rock. A bird as large as a house, as broad as a cloud, with legs as round as old trees. That dome was the egg of the rock, and I had wandered into the nest of the bird.
Father Sinbad.
I thought at first that I might be crushed as the rock settled into her nest, but I found a corner in the vegetation where I was safe. The rock hovered, then settled into her nest. So large is this bird, the rock, that it bore in its beak as its supper a full-grown elephant.
Oh, Father Sinbad.
Do not be frightened, my friend and son. I am here. I was not slain. After the rock had dined upon its elephant, it slept. And then I crawled out toward its legs. I reasoned that I could only get out of the wilderness where I found myself if I could fly with the rock. So I unwound my turban, and winding and binding it around the leg of the huge bird and me, I tied myself to it. In the morning, the great bird rose. It did not feel my presence at all. Within hours, we seemed to fly hundreds of miles, and then the rock spied a valley in the midst of high mountains, and spied there especially a huge succulent snake. It swooped down, landed, and as it pecked at the snake, I loosened the rags which bound me to its legs and fled away. As soon as I was clear from the rock, my eyes opened wide in wonder. The entire floor of this valley was strewn with precious gems, diamonds, rubies, opals. I had never seen such wealth. I scooped up handfuls of these jewels, stuffing them into every pocket, even into the linings of my clothes. But now, a new fortune in my possession. How was I to escape from the valley? Sheer cliffs hemmed it in, cliffs so steep no man could climb them. Suddenly, a fell from the cliff and landed at my feet. It was the whole fresh carcass of a bull. In fright, I fled behind a boulder, and good thing I did too, for barely was I safe there when a huge eagle swooped down and grabbed the carcass in its claws. I saw that hundreds of gems had stuck to the surface of the meat. I watched as the eagle soared into the air again, carrying the carcass to the top of the cliff and to its nest. Barely had it landed there, then a band of men set up a great shout, frightening the eagle into flight again. These men were gem gatherers, and it was their custom to throw meat into the valley, trick eagles into retrieving the meat, frighten off the birds, then pick out the gems which had stuck to the meat. Gatherers threw another carcass into the valley. Here, I thought, was my means of escape. Quickly, I tied myself to the under part of the meat. It was but a minute before another eagle seized the carcass and flew to its nest at the top of the cliff. As it released its grip on the carcass, the band of men set up a great shout, and the bird flew off in fright. At first, when they saw me, the gem gatherers were angry that I had stumbled onto their secret. But I shared some of my gems with them, and they showed me the way to the nearest city. From that city, I embarked for Baghdad by caravan. From place to place we wandered, and at each I would sell some gems, buy other goods, and trade. By the time I reached home, my fortune was tripled.
You are wise, Sinbad the sailor, as well as brave.
Those times seem so long ago. But, well, my son, I have wearied again. Leave me now, but I should be pleased if you would return tomorrow. I have still another strange adventure to relate.
I will, with pleasure, Lord.
The next day, Sinbad the porter returned to the palace of Sinbad the sailor. From the money the old man had given to him, he had saved enough to buy a gift, a handsome wine cup wrought of gold and ruby red glass. The gift touched Sinbad the sailor, for he knew that this had probably cost the last coin that the porter still had. He muttered only a simple thanks. Again they dined, and again the old man began a tale of his adventures.
My son, we have many days before us in our friendship, during which I can tell you of strange lands and strange peoples, of wondrous sights and the marvels of Allah's world. Not all my voyages were fraught with danger. Some went smoothly with events of but pleasure. But there was one voyage, my last, before retiring to enjoy my old age, which might excite your ears. I sailed with a good store of merchandise from Basra. It was spring, and we were headed for Africa. One day, we stopped at a small island to refresh our supply of water, and there, gleaming in the distance, was the shiny dome of the egg of a rock. My fellow travelers had never seen such a sight, and rushed to it to examine it more closely. I warned the men off, but none would believe my tale of a bird as large as a cloud with legs as big around as the trunks of old trees. These foolish men took up branches and began to beat at the egg to break its shell. And suddenly, the sky grew black. The mother rock had returned. It swooped down, pecking at the men with its great beak, killing them in great numbers. Some of us were lucky enough to reach our ship, we hoisted anchor and sailed swiftly from the shore. But the rock pursued us on great wings. In its claws was a boulder as big as a hill. The sky above the ship grew black, and with deadly aim, the rock dropped the boulder on the ship. Our hull was cracked, and the ship foundered. As far as I know, I was the only survivor. I seized a plank and lashed myself to it, and when the sea was calm again, for the boulder had turned up massive waves, I paddled to the shore.
That shore, Africa, Lord?
No, my son, but it was an island near to Africa. I soon found my way to the only city there. Of course, I had lost all my merchandise in the sunken ship, but with some jewels I had on my person, I bought passage to the African coast. Then I was almost penniless. But Allah provides. I discovered that the natives there had a custom. In the hills there lived great bands of huge monkeys, which are called apes. These are sometimes larger than a man. There are also trees on which grow a sweet fruit with a hard shell, which is called the coconut. This fruit grows high on palm trees, and it is difficult to gather, so the natives go in armed bands to the hills and frighten the apes into the palm trees. Then they throw stones at the apes, who, in consequent anger, pluck down the coconuts and throw them at the natives. Then the natives calmly gather the fruit from the ground and return home.
How strange. And even amusing.
And how profitable it was for me. With some of my remaining money, I hired the natives to gather me a great load of coconuts from the hills of the apes. The natives thought I was mad, for they only gathered the fruit as it was needed for food, and they could not understand anyone who would want so many nuts at once and would pay for them in the bargain. When I had gathered enough nuts in this manner to fill a small ship, I hired one with my last money and headed for the nearest civilized city. There, the fruit of the nut was unknown, and it proved a great novelty in the markets. My coconuts fetched huge prices, and swiftly I made a minor fortune.
As I have said, Lord, you are wise as well as brave.
Well, my son, I took my money and wandered on, buying merchandise and trading, and increasing my wealth. And finally, I reached some islands rich in all manner of spices. I purchased so large an amount of spice that word reached the local king that such a rich merchant as I was in his islands. The king sent men to invite me to his palace, and the king entertained me royally and asked me many questions of the world beyond the seas that surrounded his islands. His islands were rich, but they were backward, since their contact with the world was limited to the visits of occasional merchants like myself. The king asked me if I would prolong my stay in his land and advise him of how it could be improved and become modern like countries outside. And so I stayed in his land for 3 years as his chief advisor, directing the building of docks and schools and hospitals. The king rewarded me richly with wealth untold. But eventually, I longed for Baghdad and for home. The king was saddened at my decision to leave him, but he now had learned so much that he himself could carry on my work. And so, in a great ship laden with spices and my accumulated wealth, I set forth on my homeward voyage. And now, I am too old to fare forth on the seas to trade. But I remember.
Oh, Father of my heart, do you think that had Allah chosen for me to be born above the estate of a porter, that I, too, could have been a sailor merchant? Let me answer that, Sinbad the porter, with a question. Did not my tales of danger frighten you?
Yes, Lord, at times. But think of the wonders you have seen and the wisdom you have attained. I could endure the dangers and the hardships, I think, in return for the rewards of knowledge and courage well spent.
Well said, my son. Would you then indeed like to become a merchant sailor?
With all my heart, my lord.
Then so shall it be. Tomorrow, Sinbad the porter, I, Sinbad the sailor, shall adopt you legally. You shall become my son, in name and in fact. I will tell you more of life at sea and in strange lands, so that you might learn by my experience. Then I shall buy you merchandise and send you forth on voyages, and each time you return, you shall tell me of your own wonderful adventures. And I shall relive my youth through your eyes.
My lord, how can I thank you?
It is I who shall thank you, Sinbad the porter, soon to be Sinbad the sailor. For you will bring life to my old age. But now, come, embrace me, my new son, and from this moment, call me no more Lord, but rather Father.
And the old Sinbad kept his word to the young. And young Sinbad became a sailor merchant and had marvelous adventures, and himself grew rich. The old Sinbad lived on for many years. His old age kept fresh for the tales of the young Sinbad. And when he died, all of his possessions became those of the young Sinbad. Thus, the humble porter became one of the richest men on earth. But he remembered the poverty of his youth and always used his wealth for the good of all men.
So that was Sinbad the Sailor for 1963. So if you like, subscribe, share, and comment. Have a groovy day when another video come out real soon.